Hi everybody, this is T at Aloha Astro, and today we have a new moon in the cardinal fire sign of Aries, as well as a partial solar eclipse that occurred early this morning, which unfortunately I wasn't able to see. I hope that if you were up and about early and in the right part of the country or the world, you were able to see it. Let's take a look at the forecast for this new moon that's occurring at 8 degrees 35 minutes of Aries. New moon and partial solar eclipse in Aries, Saturday, March 29th, amplifies your determination to initiate personal transformation and empowerment as the moon, sun, and Mercury retrograde in the cardinal fire sign of Mars-ruled Aries form a sextile aspect with Pluto in Aquarius, which is but one of multiple aspects linking the Aries planets, Saturn, the North Node, Neptune, and Venus retrograde, all in Pisces, with Mars in Cancer and Uranus in Taurus, through a cradle aspect pattern generated by a lineup of planets in 6 consecutive signs, creating a powerful locomotive-like drive led by the call to action of Mars at one edge of the bowl and magnified by the intensity of Pluto on the other edge of the bowl. Today's new moon sits roughly at the halfway point of the bowl, with the south node in Virgo in the empty half of the chart wheel on the opposite side, highlighting the habits or routines that are no longer effective, or you have accepted as a default program. The antidote to the inertia and the answer to who you are, what you truly want, and what is best for you can be found when you tune into your body's primal response to your existential questions. Your mind wants a direct linear path to follow, but finding the path forward requires perceiving and interpreting intuitive signals and symbolic messages, which could come to you through meditative and mindful physical activity, in nature if possible. Immerse yourself in the sights and sounds of spring to align with the frequency of renewal, change, and growth while you work on cultivating your best I am affirmations and spiritual warrior or elemental deity persona. So it is a big deal today. I don't know if you're feeling particularly stressed or the parts of your body that might be responding to this energy are the head. Aries rules the head, and the stomach. Cancer rules your gut, your stomach. So those are probably going to be 2 trigger points for you, especially while we have this square aspect going on between Mars in Cancer and Chiron in Aries. If something just doesn't sit right with you, or your gut and instinct are saying no to something and you have a very strong aversion, listen to that. Tune into the body today. And some of what you might be going through is also cathartic because Pluto is involved, and so is the planet Uranus. That there may be stuff coming up that has been suppressed or hidden. The nature of an eclipse is that it usually will reveal things that you were not fully aware of before, and the shock of that could be rather big, and just the feeling of loss of control that might come up, although both Pluto and Uranus are favorably aspected. Just because aspects are labeled as good, the trines and the sextiles, and bad, squares and oppositions, doesn't mean that we always feel that way about them. Often we take those trines and sextiles for granted and don't consciously put them to work, or are aware of the large amount of energy that they can be moving. And very often it's the squares and the oppositions that are the activating force, the pressure, the friction, the irritant that will push us into finally doing something. So we have a little bit of both here, and then we have the drive that comes from having this bowl where Pluto and Mars are basically generating a great deal of energy. And we are not in an opposition right now exactly, but we will be pulling into it further as we go along, and Mars gets closer to the tail end of Cancer and then moves into Leo. Once we get to Mars in Leo, which I believe is in June, we are going to be feeling the opposition a bit more strongly between those two planets, and intensity will rise, so will your courage and your creativity in response to the pressure. Right now, everything does focus very much on the self from both the spiritual perspective and the intuitive perspective and the physical, the material, the physical, and what your body is telling you. Taking time to be with yourself and ask those questions, particularly about what you truly want and desire, or what your real purpose or path is, if you are unclear on that, is the perfect way to spend your day. And I would also recommend perhaps some free form writing where you simply sit with pen and paper and let whatever comes into your mind spill out on the page. There are going to be multiple ways of looking at things, which adds to some of the confusion. You're trying to find clarity right now because of the Aries energy that wants to find those signs to follow and know which direction to head in. But Jupiter is in a dual sign. It's a very imaginative sign, but it presents multiple opportunities because it is mutable air. And the square aspect to Venus and Neptune and Saturn and the South Node, all of this energy is saying, well, what do I do? Where do I go? Do I really want this or do I not? I don't know if there would be some buyer's remorse going on at this point if you are going to be spending money on anything. But I would say, unless you have to go out and spend some money on something, while we still have both Mercury and Venus retrograde, do slow down and think about it and do your research before you simply buy on impulse because you really want it, especially if it's going to put you into further debt. There is a chance that once you have it for a while, you find out that you don't really need it or you don't really want it. Hold on to your receipts. Also, don't believe everything that you are hearing out in the world at large right now. And if you are not sure if something is actually correct, see if you can verify the source and if it is accurate information or not. I don't think there's a lot of deliberate manipulation from people close to you, per se, but there's a lot of influencing going on, and there's also a lot of impressionable people right now, especially while we have this cluster in Pisces. The highest manifestation of Saturn, the North Node, Venus retrograde, Neptune in Pisces, is to commit and devote yourself to some higher purpose or goal, or to be inspired, maybe to return to something that you loved before, that you believed was going to be your path in life. But if you got knocked off that path, that Venus retrograde, as well as Mercury now moving out of Aries and is going back into Pisces for a brief time before both of these come out of retrograde. Mercury will come out of retrograde, I believe, on April 7th, and Venus a little later, around April 13th. You have time. You have time to look at things from all angles, all perspectives. The deeper truth right now will be in what your body is telling you and what is the truth of you, to own your power and to recognize your uniqueness and individuality, which is what Pluto and Uranus are lending the energy for, so that you can step into that more fully. The more you are in alignment with your own fullness of expression, the more of you there is to share with the world. And the more you dilute yourself or modify yourself, or as I mentioned in the forecast, that south node there in Virgo, sometimes the shadow side of Virgo is to be too polite, too accommodating, trying to cover all the bases and uh, do everything as properly as possible and not create any waves and not offend anybody. However, if you are not true to yourself and you're not truly expressing who you are, then you are denying other people the fullness of you. And you are also setting up an energy that can feel false, where people may subtly and subconsciously perceive that you are not really projecting who you are, that you are projecting an image or an illusion of who you might think they want you to be. And that is what we have going on with the lunar nodes. Potentially, by helping and healing, we aren't always doing the best work or doing the best thing, making the best choice. Sometimes the proper way to help and to heal is actually to let go and to not feel like we have to fix everyone else or we have to modify ourselves in order to make everybody else happy. And that is something that this Aries lunation will be showing you. All right, let's take a look at the Sabian symbol. So we round up to 9 degrees of Aries, a crystal gazer. Keynote: the development of an inner realization of organic wholeness. The crystal sphere symbolizes wholeness. Within the sphere, images take form. These images may reveal future events, but more significantly, they picture the situation as a whole, the situation which the clairvoyant is meant to interpret. The nascent mental faculties operating through still dominant emotions or collective cultural incentives act as a centralizing and whole-making power. What the intelligence perceives in its concentration is the function of every inner impulse and outer events in the open field of a personality still unclouded by egoism. At this fourth stage of the fivefold sequence, the new technique required for the development of individualized consciousness is revealed: concentrated attention. That seems pretty much what Mercury, the moon, and the sun in Aries would require from us right now, is to concentrate our attention, particularly on ourselves, while interpreting or perceiving and interpreting, as I mentioned in the forecast, the various symbols, images, energy that we're intuiting. The place to be, truly, if you can be, is out in nature. Get out by the water or under trees or just outside. And that always does expand your awareness, your consciousness, your energy, and elevate it. If you can go out and do some moving, meditative things like taking a hike, a long walk, qigong, uh, sit out in nature and do some meditating or yoga, that will definitely help you in being able to interpret the energy that's coming your way. As always, under a Mercury retrograde, do be careful when you are out and about. I noticed tons of sirens yesterday and a lot of crazy driving. Uh, People are impulsive when the moon is in Aries, and practice good defensive driving. Give yourself plenty of time to get to where you need to go. And definitely with the influence of Pisces, don't go out and drive while you're under the influence of anything. Some of that Venus and Pisces there with Neptune can give you paradoxic reactions to substances, or you can literally lose track of how much you've had to drink. And maybe, a couple of beers don't normally affect you, but given the intensity and the heightened physical responses to things, you may react in a way that's different than normal to almost anything that you're either ingesting or is in your environment. Just think more highly strung right now and a little bit disoriented. Take care, stay safe, and I'll speak with you in 2 weeks when we're back for a full moon coming up. And we'll start looking at how we get past those retrogrades and look ahead to some other major planetary shifts that are coming this spring and summer.